Introducing another painting. This one is called Shenandoah Sunshine. I created the background from a book called The Big Book of Bugs. I was really obsessed with this book as a child. It was one of my favorite books. I was reading all the pages of that book about bugs. Like, I wanted to know about the flies and the mosquitoes and the beetles. It wasn't really important to me to only know about the pretty bugs. It actually started out as something I did with my friend as a child. We would go to the park and we would see like caterpillars and we would make little terrariums for them. So it's hard to see now because it's the actual like first layer. And the book had these, it had these 3D pages that you'd put on those old school 3D glasses that you might remember if you were born in the early 90s, of like blue film on one side and red film on the other. So I took one of those pages from the background, from that I used as the background. If you're new to this channel, my name is Nadia Babich. I'm a mixed media artist and I make art to build resilience. Intuitive mark making is a big part of my process. I'm interested in figuring out like what's going on in my subconscious, and the best way of doing that is to not let your brain work and just let your hand make marks. And it's very freeing. You don't think about it, you don't judge it. Of course, it doesn't always turn out pretty, but that's why, like, after doing some marks, I stop and I look at it and I think to myself, okay, like, what does it need? Is there something funky in the composition that needs to change? Does it need more layers? Does it need fewer layers, or like covering up areas? But I do try not to cover up everything so that there's still some hints of what the original layer was. I wanted to ask you as the audience, like, what do you see in this piece? I don't want to plant any ideas in your head, but I will tell you what I see and what I was thinking about with this painting, and explaining the title of it. Now that you've had some time to think, this painting is about Shenandoah, and Shenandoah is the closest national park to where I live. It's a place I love to visit. I mean, you still have to drive like 2 hours to get to the best parts, but it's well worth the drive. Some of these green shades just remind me of like the trees and the bushes and just all the little details. And when the sun peeks out over the mountains and it's really bright. And so to me, this is kind of like the sun and how it is like shining on the landscape. So those are some of my inspirations. I love to go hiking. I started hiking during the pandemic. It was like kind of reviving my love of the outdoors that I had as a child when I was collecting caterpillars and making terrariums. I was like just in awe of all the little details in the woods. I often take photographs of small things like little mushrooms or little roots and grass, and just like I'm attracted to those little details. So after I take those pictures, I go home and I sort out the best ones, and I often use those to come up with some of the abstract concepts in these paintings. So in this case, I didn't do that as much because this one was more intuitive, but those kinds of thoughts and inspiration is always in the back of my mind. You might be wondering some of the media I used in this piece. And a few of the things are metallic paint, collage. There's a bit of like metallic paper or like mossy green paper here and here too, although what I like sometimes is to collage with things that look like they could have been painted on. I use a marker called a Sakura marker. They're also called like solid markers. So it's very vibrant, and once it dries, it's kind of oily at first and you can scrape into it, but once it dries, it's like totally dry. I think they use them in like construction because they leave such intense marks and they're permanent. So I used 2 different colors in the painting of those. And I like to like reveal what's underneath by scraping, which you can see like here and here. And I also used high flow acrylics to create these like flowy lines across that are more, they're like thicker and they have like more three-dimensionality. There's also some marker in here, some bright acrylic marker, these pink and blue lines, for example. So yeah, there's a lot of different materials being used.